I will die on the hill that says Toy Story 3 is better than this movie, though.
You'll
That's my
die that
hill.
this movie is better than Toy Story 3.
Right.
No.
Yeah.
No.
Yes. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm dying for this movie.
Welcome back, my fantasy to Not My Fantasy, the show where we talk about fantasy films and the lore that inspired them. I'm Cullen, and this is my co-host Hannah, and she hates when I say fantasy.
Wow, he spoke for me.
Yeah. Well, your
That's two
cat.
episodes in a row of him not letting women speak.
Oh my God. Well, you were busy making out with your cat, not literally. Your cat was trying to make out with you.
It's like, whoa, hold on. I would say he's very needy because he just had surgery. He's just needy. So yeah, I'm Hannah.
And I guess I'll speak for another woman. We have friend of the pod, friend IRL, Allyssa Swearingen, here to talk about one of her favorite movies.
Hello.
Wow. You're really giving everything away.
We're here to talk about How to Train Your Dragon from 2010, as you would know from clicking on whatever you clicked on to turn on this episode. Because we are Happy Year of the Dragon, everybody.
Oh, is it?
Yeah.
Wow, I didn't know that.
Yeah. It's Year of the Dragon, because when I was doing research, I was reminded, and I was like, yeah, I went to a Lunar New Year festival. I should remember that. But yeah, Lunar New Year 2024, bringing in Lucky Year of the Wood Dragon. So for our second half so we did first half of May, talking about Pacific Islander movies, Moana, Bionicle, and then now we're talking about some dragon movies, some Dragon Rider movies specifically.
Yeah.
We want to ride dragons so bad. So
Who doesn't though? I mean, really.
Yeah, really.
Yeah, who doesn't?
He's literally crawling over my arm that I'm barring him from getting to the computer.
Edgar, this
He
is
thinks this
Edgar.
movie's about him.
Yeah.
You're so vain. Carly Simon.
So How to Train Your Dragon, I think I saw this one for the first time in church. They used to like have like movie viewings, like for like family friendly movies. So like people could just take their kids, and their it was like it's actually kind of a nice thing. So it was kind of like, not everyone can afford to go to the movies. Like, let's play something. And they just have a few movies throughout the week and people could just like, it was like a pay what you can kind of thing. I remember seeing this with my friend who had a bunch of siblings and they had all seen the movie before. So I saw it with this like, I think he was older than a toddler, but not in first grade, like that kind of age.
Okay.
And he was like attached to me and like explaining the plot of the movie as it was happening, being like, it's Toothless, or like Toothless is in trouble. And I think that was the best way to experience it. It honestly very much, I mean, it's a good movie, but it elevated it even more because like I felt how attached this child was to what was happening. And I did see the other two in theaters. I remember crying in one of them. I remember saying, I want to go out. And someone's like, oh, where do you want to go? I'm like, I want to see How to Train Your Dragon 3. And they're like, oh, I meant like to the club. And I was like, yeah, but I want to see How to Train Your Dragon 3. They're like the cartoon. And I was like, it's an animated film.
Different ideas of the phrase going out.
Yeah, I was like going out of my house.
Physically leaving.
Yeah. Allyssa, what is your experience with How to Train Your Dragon?
I'm pretty sure I watched this in theaters for the very first time. I have no idea how many times I've watched it since then.
Yeah.
I can tell you that I watched it for this podcast. Then I watched all the special features because I own the DVD. And then I watched it again with the director's commentary. And I still love it. And it was amazing. It was such a great experience both times in a row. So that is like the level that I love this movie.
You have
And
a toothless like pen thing on your desk, right?
pen thing.
You have a toothless
I have a toothless piggy bank.
piggy bank, yes.
The dragon bank, actually.
Dragon Bank, yeah.
Yes. But it's over there right now.
It looks like
It's
you were
behind
looking
the
at
Toothless.
It's like you're like, hey, Toothless.
This is my actual top favorite movie. Like, I used to say it's one of my favorite movies. It's not. It's just my favorite movie of all time.
I mean, when we were like talking about different movies, I was like, oh, we should have How to Train Your Dragon. And then it was just like assumed, like, okay, so Alyssa's
Alyssa.
gonna be on the episode.
And if we do the sequels, probably gonna be Alyssa.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
I have not watched all of the TV shows. But
Oh,
Yeah. There's a lot of content.
yeah, there's a lot. That's mostly why I haven't watched it, because there's just a lot of it. But I will forever come back to the movies. It works really well. I love the first movie, but the whole thing, like the three movies, work really well as a trilogy. Like, it's a good story in trilogy format as well.
Have you read the books by any chance?
So I had not. The first time I experienced this IP was the movies. For this podcast, I went to the library and I read the first book.
Oh my
She
gosh.
did more work than we did.
Because I was thinking, I was like trying to do all this dragon research. I was like, I'm not gonna. I was like, you know what? I'm just like, there's multiple movies. We'll touch on the books round two. But if you read the book, we'll talk about this book. Hannah, what is your experience with this franchise?
I don't think I ever saw this one in theaters, but I definitely saw the second one in theaters. I actually don't know if I've even seen the third one yet. But yeah, I also love this movie. I got really emotional watching it today because, kind of like Moana, it has some really strong emotional beats that just like slap every time. And so I was really feeling it. And I watched it in two sittings. And I was still feeling it. I was still invested like when I hopped in, this morning to finish it. It was great. And yeah, I really think that like this could be one of my favorite animated movies for sure, because it slaps every time. It's funny, it's cute, it's heartwarming. Dragons acting like cats. I mean, it's great. Like, but yeah, like I think it just has so many great strong emotional beats. It's just wonderful. So, yeah, I love this movie.
Yeah,
Oops, sorry, I gave away my
gave
is
your
it my fantasy.
yeah. So this movie came out in 2010, so 5 years after Chicken Little. And as I said
What?
before recording, that is Chicken Little is gonna come up. It's actually relevant to my interpretation of this film.
I agree. You said before recording that this movie kind of feels new, like when you think about it, like, oh, that's a newish movie, but it's not. But the
Yeah,
fact that it's so close to Chicken Little feels like a lifetime ago. And
yeah,
this does not.
no,
Like this feels literally like this came out 3 years ago to me. Like it's so fresh.
no,
Not that Chicken Little isn't fresh, but it has been a while since I've seen it.
Now, I don't know if I put this in the lore, but do you remember Rise of the Brave Tangled Dragons? Do you remember that fandom?
What?
There was like, it was like kind of a Tumblr thing, like a fanfic thing where you take Hiccup, Jack Frost from Rise of the Guardians, Merida and Rapunzel, and people would like ship them and they'd like do things. They like fanficked them together in different storylines. And it was like a little
Oh.
subculture, and then Frozen kind of broke it because it introduced like two female leads, and then like the dynamic of like who's included, like it shattered.
I
Did
kind
not
of
know
remember
that.
more the era after that, like the Frozen and the Jack Frost thing. I remember
Yeah,
that.
Oh, right.
I don't remember the
yeah,
quadruple people.
quadruple. Yeah, I'm not a Jelsa shipper. I don't know. I just think A, she's not straight. B, it'd be too annoying to have two people with ice powers in a relationship.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
Yeah,
Yeah.
like she'd be like, I don't want to deal with more of this.
Mhm.
No. Okay, so this movie is based on a 2003 book by the name of Cressida Cowell, or same name by the author's name, Cressida Cowell. Produced by Dreamworks Animation, distributed by Paramount Pictures, directed by Chris Sanders and Dean DeBlois, Lilo and Stitch. They directed that.
Oh, that I was like, how do I know those names? Yeah.
And produced by Bonnie Arnold with a screenplay from Sanders and DeBlois, co-wrote with Will Davies. It stars the voice of Jay Baruchel as Hiccup, Gerard Butler as Stoic the Vast, aka Buck Cluck.
What?
What?
I think the
What?
dad in this movie is spiritually the same as the dad. I'm not talking about the sequel, I'm talking about this movie, as the dad in Chicken Little. Who, when they posted a picture of Chicken Little and his dad for Father's Day, like when Disney did that, people were like, take this down, we hate him. I think this dad sucks. And that's kind of the point of the movie. Like, that's not like a hot take, like, ooh, but I'm gonna
You had me so confused. I thought you were trying to tell me that Gerard Butler also did the voice of that, and I'm like, no. I was like,
No.
I'm pretty sure
there's
that
no
was
way.
Gary Marshall.
Yeah.
I'm obsessed with my confusion. Also Gary Butler, previously on the podcast, talking about Gods of Egypt. Shout out.
Yeah, I will be clowning on Stoic, aka Buck Cluck. Chloe, if only you were here, you know what to do. That line is seared in my head from Chicken Little, and I don't know why. But we have Craig Ferguson as Gobbler, America Ferrera, Ugly Betty Barbie movie, as Astrid, Jonah Hill as Snotlout, Christopher Mintz-Plasse as Fishlegs, and TJ Miller of the Emoji Movie, and Kristen Wiig as Rough Nut and Tough Nut. It was nominated for Best Animated Feature and Score at the Oscars, and also for Best Animated Feature at the Teen Choice Awards.
The most important award you can ever be nominated.
That's
a good question.
That is a good question.
Because what did this lose to?
2010. What came out in 2010 from Disney?
Yeah, exactly.
Or Pixar. Would that be Tangled?
No, Tangled I think was 2011. Wait.
Oh.
All right. Toy Story 3.
Yeah. Oh, there's no way this movie's way better than Toy Story 3.
Everyone did weep for Toy Story 3, but yeah, I would choose How to Train Your Dragon.
Wait, I see Up and Toy Story 3 listed here.
No,
why is
Up
that?
won in 2009.
Okay.
Against The Secret of Kells. And Princess and the Frog, Fantastic Mr. Fox.
That one, I think, is a closer race.
Yeah.
Yeah, it goes Toy Story 3, then 2011, Rango.
Oh, that's right. I remember everyone loving Rango. Still haven't seen it.
Okay, wait, Tangled wasn't
weird.
Nominated? That's
when
so
did Tangled
weird.
come out?
2011.
2010. It says 2010 here.
Oh my god, so it wasn't nominated? That's weird.
Wow. That is weird.
It's a very visually good movie.
But if they had to choose between Tangled and Toy Story.
But they only nominated 3 in 2010. So people were like, Tangled isn't good enough. And I call that hater behavior.
When did it release versus when did they have the awards? Because you can overlap years.
Oh, because it was in November.
It was November. So it probably wouldn't have made it to...
No.
It would have been 2011. It should have been nominated.
Oh, and then it lost. There's a cat and parrot. Oh, there's all this artsy stuff. Kung Fu Panda 2? No, I haven't seen it. Can't knock it. Puss in Boots.
I think I saw
1. This is
really?
Sometimes it's wild to me, like what's nominated, what isn't, because like some years it's like this is obviously was just nominated because they needed to fill a slot. And then but I mean the Oscars, who cares? What like the Teen Choice Awards, that's what matters.
Yeah. Culturally significant.
Culturally significant.
I will die on the hill that says Toy Story 3 is better than this movie, though. Like
you'll die that this movie is better than Toy Story 3.
Right.
No.
Yeah.
Yes.
No.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm dying for this movie.
Yeah.
This movie, Alyssa says this movie is better than Toy Story 3. That's the quote.
That's
okay. Yeah.
It had a budget of 165 million, box office of 494.9 million. There's allegedly a live action remake coming. Please pray it away.
Suki?
I actually want to see it. I'm so pleased with this entire franchise that I don't think a live action could ruin it. So I'm just like
Bold.
interested.
It's also it stars human characters, which is going to be
Yeah.
a lot easier to do than
Mhm.
say Lion King.
The bar, as I saying, the bar has become so low. It's like, are there humans? Is there a storyline? Guys, we can ask for more.
Yeah.
Has an upcoming theme park land at the Epic Universe Park, and there is currently a stage show with puppets in one of the like international Universal Studios parks. And the fact that there hasn't been a land and or ride for this sooner,
There's not even a
criminal.
ride?
Criminal. Yeah, there's none at Universal in Hollywood.
Yeah, I don't think
Secret
I don't
Life of
so.
Pets. They got a ride. There's a minion that taunts you on your commute from the valley. My nemesis, but
This is
Yeah.
perfect for a ride, but also I
Yeah.
don't think a ride would do it justice. Maybe now, like with the technology that we have now, it could be
yeah.
done. But
Oh,
at
yeah.
the time this movie came out, I think a ride would not be good.
I went on a 3D little egg pod thing of this. I went to like a VR fair comet or con something once randomly, and there was like an egg. You're like sat in this little pod and you were like flying with the dragons, and that was cool. And there was a Spider-Man one too where you could like web.
Huh.
Yeah.
That is weird. I don't know why in my consciousness is like, of course there's a ride for this.
Because it makes
movie.
sense. It's a good
Yeah.
movie for a
Yeah.
ride.
Yeah. Yeah. In 2025, opening in Orlando. Yeah, that's so weird.
Yeah.
Huh.
So for our lore, I said we're not going to talk about the books, but Alyssa read the first book.
I did. I have it. I got it at the library.
Support your libraries. I just got my
Yes.
LA Public Library card.
I actually
Nice.
got the second book too, but I haven't read it yet. I only had time to read this one.
How dare you? How
Books.
dare you not dedicate more time to our podcast?
If I really, really enjoyed it, I probably would have read the second one as well.
Oh,
Spicy.
Yeah. So I'm probably going to piss some people off who hold these books near and dear to their heart, nostalgia wise, because they are good kids' book, but the movie's better, like way better. It's
Yeah.
way better. Actually, one of the interesting things is there are some major discrepancies in the way that the story is told. They elevated the conflict, whereas in the books, the dragons are already kind of like partnered with the Vikings, and Hiccup just has to figure out how to train his dragon because he's not a good Viking.
Oh.
But they elevated the conflict in the movie so that Vikings and dragons are enemies.
Yeah.
Dragons can speak, but only Hiccup knows how to speak back. It's like an actual language. So they're less super intelligent and like I would say the level of the dragons in the movies, depending on what you believe about animals that you live in the world in reality
Yeah.
right now, like probably like orca type intelligence. It's where I would put them.
Yeah.
In the movies, they are super intelligent, but they don't have a language. And Toothless is not this Toothless, like at all. He's a terrible terror. I'm pretty sure terrible terrors are based on the original Toothless in the book. And that's like the type of dragon he is in the book, which
A
is
terrible
the
terror.
little tiny ones.
Oh, interesting.
Mhm. Yeah, so there are a lot of differences, and the movie is really really took a different turn with the entire story, and it's a good thing that they did because it's a great story. Just like if this was turned into a movie verbatim, it would not be a good movie.
Hmm.
this is a good movie. So
She
I
would
think they made a
die
lot
for
of good
this movie.
decisions. I would die for this movie.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I think you're totally right. The change of like making dragons and humans enemies, it just makes more sense because it's also going to be a more satisfying arc and it's a way
Mhm.
bigger conflict to overcome. Because I feel like he's just a bad Viking. I feel like that's kind of vague.
Yeah. And I mean, like, it is very vague. They sort of capitalize that in the movie where they talk about how, like he doesn't do things the Viking way, but him being smart and like having new ideas is not necessarily him being bad at something. It's just him being good at something else.
Yeah.
So it's like they made a lot of really good decisions story wise.
Yeah. Interesting.
Okay, so that's the lore I delved into is what is a dragon? We're talking about the history of dragons. Lots of people like to be like, well, people found dinosaur bones, and they're like, that's a dragon. But that people are like, well, how come there are dragon stories in places where there's no fossils?
There you go.
And so there's some people that think it's silly to spend time trying to figure out which IRL dragon or like
Or
IRL animal dragons are based on, and just
right.
like accept that like giant lizard creature is something people could make up.
Yeah,
Uh
agreed.
yeah. So that's kind of like, yeah, I feel like that makes more sense to me. I think people would
That
be like,
everyone made up a giant lizard creature.
yeah, maybe that's like, oh, that alligator is crazy. What if one was huge? Like, and it could
Yeah.
fly. That's people
Well, wings
imagine
aren't
things.
universal though.
They are not. But we're gonna start with in Sumeria with the Usumgal, the lion snake, which is believed to be one of the oldest concepts of a dragon, and was featured in Sumerian literature and art. And then, as we get to Babylon, we introduce this kind of classic dynamic of thunder or sky deity fights dragon. That's like a thing. People went hard for that. So we've talked about her in our episode on Diablo 4, Tiamat, the great
Again.
serpent, the saltwater goddess who gave birth to demons to fight the gods and was defeated by the Marduk, the thunder god of Babylon. Was she a snake or was she a lady? Who's to say? People debate whether she was a giant monster or like a more traditional goddess or both.
Why do we debate that?
I don't think there are that
Mythologians,
many.
you know those people.
Yeah. I don't think there's that many like artistic renderings of her. So sometimes it's like when you're going off a translation, there's
Right, but what is the real difference between a god and a giant monster?
Well, that's the question.
that's the question. That is the question. I
You
don't know if I could
stumped
answer
him.
that for you. I mean, it's all who's telling the story, right? I've listened to the Wicked soundtrack. Uh it's it's just, like they're like, oh, she's evil because she wanted things to not exist. This generally, but she was also like mad because they killed her husband, I think. It's also like, fair. Go off. So another shout out to Gods of Egypt. There is did they call him Apophis in the movie? The giant
Uh,
shadow snake.
Maybe? I don't know. I don't remember.
They said they pronounced it weird, but there's Adophis or Apophis, the giant shadow snake that fights Ra every night and
Uh-huh,
tries to eat him
yes.
to consume the world in darkness. But big snakes are at it again. Uh, God fought a great sea monster called Leviathan, who could like breathe fire. Sky gods did this all the time. It was a thing. They're like, we're gonna fight a big monster. And but keeping in Bible lore, so in Revelations, they describe a multi-headed red dragon who swoops a third of the stars from the sky and pursues a woman close with the sun, who gives birth to a baby boy. And this passage goes on for longer than they usually read it at church. And there's a lot of beef with him and the lady. They kind of the part they read at church, like, okay, now we're talking about the sun. There's extra stuff with this dragon trying to get this lady. Uh, and he's gonna wage war on her descendants because he hates her. So, and they're like, oh, her descendants are the church. And you're like, okay, you can say that, but I don't know. I think it's a personal beef. Dragon versus lady. Greek mythology. It's back. It's always showing up. Lots of dragons. There was Typhon, the father of monsters. Zeus fought him. We met his wife Echidna in the Percy Jackson series. And so one of these kids was the Hydra. So you heard it here first. The Hydra was a Nepo baby. He had monster parents. Fought by Hercules. There's also the Python, which was a great snake or dragon made by Mother Earth. And it guarded the Oracle of Delphi and maybe used to be worshipped there and was killed by Apollo. And there's lots of analysis on whether this refers to like a Greek taking over of a different religious site. There's a lot going on there. There's many explanations in mythos for this. It could be either because Apollo or the snake or both of them kind of sucked and people hated the snake and then Apollo killed it. They're like, yay. Or Apollo killed the snake and they're like, why'd you kill our snake? Others are that Hera used the snake to chase Leto, Apollo's mom, while she was giving birth to Apollo and Artemis. And so he killed the snake for chasing his mom while she was pregnant and giving birth. But the priestess of the oracle was called the Pythia, and they had the Pythian Games, which were created to purify Apollo for the crime of killing Mother Earth's snake. So there's also Cadmus. He fought a dragon that was sacred to Ares and was cursed forever. He kind of atoned for it, and he married Harmonia, who was the daughter of Aphrodite and Ares. But his life kept sucking, partially due to a cursed necklace that his Harmonia was given as a wedding present. And like all this stuff kept happening to him. And eventually he was like, you know, if the gods care about snakes so much, I wish I was a snake. And then they turned him into a snake. And then his wife was like, oh my God, I'm alone. Make me a snake too. So that's what happened to them. So, and then Jason had to sneak past the dragon to get the golden fleece. Medea did most of the work there. Happy herstory. I'm only going to touch on Eastern dragons lightly because it's a very different tradition and there's going to be movies and things where we like delve into that more. But these dragons that we've been talking about have been very antagonistic, right? In different Eastern cultures, they tend to be more symbols of good luck and benevolence and like the power of nature. More wind and water than fire, but sometimes fire like this kind of like more primordial, and so that's like can be creative and destructive. The Zhuzuan describes a man named Dong Fu who loved dragons and he could understand a dragon's will. So he was able to tame them and raise them. He could train a dragon. And he served Emperor Shun, who gave him the family name Huanlong, meaning dragon raiser. So,
Cool.
yeah. That's why I was like, okay, we have to talk about this. There was a dragon trainer. There's also Lord Yagao, who was like a weeb for dragons, and he loved them so much, and he decorated his whole house with dragon stuff. And a dragon showed up to be like, oh my gosh, thank you. But he freaked out when he met one and ran away. It reminds me of that picture of the little kid holding like a toy truck with a garbage man, where like he finally met his heroes and was overwhelmed because the kid's like,
Starstruck.
Yeah. But let's talk about Norse mythology. And let's briefly explain what a Viking might be. A Viking is a Scandinavian settler / pirate from the 8th to 11th centuries. So, before they were Christianized, there's lots of conflict, burning of monasteries, speaking of Secret of Kells, that movie. There's no reason for them to be speaking with a Scottish accent.
I was just gonna say,
I was like, halfway through the movie, I was like, wait. And then I was like, this music, some of it's kind of Celtic. And I did try and look up some Scandinavian music, and there's some similarities, but it does sound different. And I tried to find anything, like I was looking for articles about like this, and I could only find articles where people are like, it's offensive that they speak with a Scottish accent, and only time Scandinavian accents appear is to be made fun of. I don't want to speak to that because there are times where I felt like they might be reading it too deep in that like how we have French people like Les Mis, they have British accents. Like it could just be an American thing where it's like we only go for UK accents and we just kind of apply that like North Scottish because that's north of England.
I mean, it looks like they did actually like colonize parts of Scotland.
Yeah, but
and stuff. And so that's what I thought. It was like, oh, okay, so it's sort of like pointing to like this is just a Viking colony
in
in
Scotland.
Scotland.
But then they would, by the time they were speaking with a Scottish accent, they would no longer be really Vikings.
Right.
Because
Yeah.
that's sort of
So
like
I
with
don't know.
the Irish and red hair, that actually tends to come more from Scandinavia, but it's just
Right.
they colonized, pillaged, like Dublin was kind of a Viking thing. Yeah, but I don't, yeah, it's one of the things where I'm like, okay, like I did some research
I,
into it, but like, I don't know what to say about it. They just have Scottish accents.
yeah. Yeah. I just assumed it was in reference to to being a colony, but
I think it's more of like they just wanted like a Braveheart kind of vibe. Like I think
Yeah.
people like that accent and like it
yes.
gives like tough warrior culture.
Yeah.
Is
And
is Stoic the only one with a Scottish accent?
Most of the adults.
yeah.
Gabber doesn't have one.
Yes, he
But
does.
like,
That's
does
Gabber.
he?
Yeah. He the
I
actor is Scottish.
Yeah.
oh
Um
no.
yeah. I'm trying to think. So, and so is Jerry Butler. So they're both Scottish. Some of the background actors when they talk, but none of the teens have Scottish accents.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just the adults.
It kind of goes for I mean, it's still big now, but very much in the 2000s, like that kind of like a Celtic, like mashing of Celtic cultures because it gives like pre-Christian Europe energy. And so
Yeah.
that's just
Mhm.
kind of like that was in. People were like, play
Yeah.
that, you know. It's like
I
post
mean,
Enya.
also, this is a fake world.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's one of the things
Yeah.
like it took me halfway through the movie to even be like, wait, why is it Scottish? Like I just started and was like, yeah, okay, this is how they talk.
I was thinking about it the entire time, but I also was just like, this is a kids' movie. I think you're right. I think like the Scottish accent, especially to like American audiences, gives a certain vibe that they were looking for from these adults. And also like there's the historical context there that like sure it
Yeah.
works.
Well, I mean, it's like in Beauty and the Beast. Like only the like horny romantics have the French accent.
Pepe Le Pew.
Yeah. It's like Lumiere and the Feather Duster. But Cogsworth and Mrs. Potts are British because they're like
British.
high-ranking servants. Belle's
Yeah.
American, you know, like
Yeah. So like we could have this discussion about literally any
any
movie.
movie. Yeah.
Hmm.
Um, I mean that kid
Yeah.
in Les Mis and his Cockney accent in
True.
post-Napoleonic France. Like, yeah. But back to dragons. There's Jormungandr, the world serpent, the son of Loki and his troll witch side piece Angrboda. Um, he encircled Midgard, Middle Earth, where everyone lives. And he had beef with Thor. They had long-standing beef. Thor, a thunder god, see? It's a
Mm.
thing. And they would kill each other in Ragnarok. Thor would kill him, but then take 9 steps staggering backwards and die from the venom.
They
Mm.
murder each other. Technically, the world hasn't ended, so it hasn't happened yet.
Yeah. So we'll see. See if we get that one for the gram. There's also Nidhogg or Nidhogg, a giant dragon at the bottom of Yggdrasil that just gnaws on the roots of the world tree. And there's Fafnir, who's kind of an iconic dragon in the world of dragon and Sigurd. So we talked about the Volsung saga or the Nibelung saga in Lord of the Rings.
Mhm.
And so this is going to give some Tolkien energy. But there's 3 brothers, Fafnir, Otter, and Regin, and then Odin and his brother Honir, who only shows up to be the 3rd guy in stories and has no other traits, and Loki, who's his blood brother. They're like trying to get this gold, and they kill Otter while he's disguised as an otter. And Otter is dead, and their dad, the dad of the 3 brothers, is like, "Wow, you killed my son. I hate that." And so they're like, he's like, "You owe me, like, you have to pay me back." It's a lawsuit. And so the gods pay him back in cursed gold. And it's like they have like cover the whole body in gold. And like there's like, yeah, there's cursed rings and all this stuff. There's a very light retelling of this one, but Fafnir then wants the cursed gold, so he kills his father and takes control of the horde, becoming a worm or a dragon. And like the exact nature of the curse depends on the era. And so early on in the stories, this is also true of like Beowulf. like the dragon is described as like a worm, like a snaky snake. And then the more it goes on, it becomes like dragon, like breathe fire, has limbs and wings, flies. So there's like an evolution of how people thought of dragons in the Middle Ages. Um, so Regan the Smith gets Sigurd to slay the dragon. But sometimes the dragon gives his own lore as he's dying and warns Sigurd about the cursed gold. So then Regan is like, eat the heart, or like he wants to eat the heart, so he's like, cook the heart for me. So Sigurd cooks it, but then he gets a little hot, ooh, ouch, and licks his finger, and then he tastes the heart juice, and that gives him the language of birds. And the birds tell him Regan's gonna betray you, so he betrays Regan first. He gets the cursed gold, and so his life doesn't super end well. He does date a Valkyrie. But yeah, so that's kind of the proto Lord of the Rings, like cursed ring making issues. And then there's medieval dragons. And this is where in the Middle Ages, dragons with arms and wings become kind of like standard. But I think we talked about this in Sleeping Beauty, but we have St. George and the Dragon. The classics are where the dragon's eating livestock, and then it's like, give me a virgin every few days. And then now it's finally the princess's turn. And everyone's like, ah. And then George is like, I'll show up. And he defeats the dragon, and in some cases kills it or uses her girdle as a noose. And then takes the dragon to town, him and the princess. And he's like, I'll kill it if you all convert to Christianity. And they all do, and he kills it. So
Wow.
yeah, there's also Saint Margaret of Antioch. She was a Christian rebel girl, aka a virgin martyr, which is like a whole brand of saint. And she was imprisoned by Roman officials, I think they say during the Diocletian persecutions, and a dragon came and ate her. The dragon, who was Satan, came in to her cell and ate her, but she made the sign of the cross and exploded out of him and became the patron of childbirth in the process.
Love that.
Which is funny because not a saint. There are saints who did actually give birth in their lives, but
What?
no.
Wow.
On some stories, she just makes the sign of the cross and he exploded pre-swallowing. But this is a popular thing in art. Like if you see a saint holding like a dragon, a saint lady, that's usually Saint Margaret, or like exploding out of one, definitely Saint Margaret. The Catholic Church pretty early on was like, yeah, she's probably not real. There's like discrepancies, but she did appear to Joan of Arc. So she was employed by God in the 15th century. She's on the payroll at some point, according to Joan, who was a bad bitch. So,
Yeah, I believe her. I'm inclined to believe her.
I'm inclined to
Believe
I don't
women.
believe anything that Joan of Arc says, but I do believe that she knows how to lie her ass off and get ahead of the world.
Gaslight gatekeep girl boss.
Yes.
Joan of Arc is like, to me, she's like, because you can like read her trial and stuff, and she's so smart. And she's also a bad bitch because like, well, why did they speak to you in French, not English? And she's like, well, God fucking hates you. That's why. They speak your dumbass language. And they're like, why not Latin? She's like, I don't know. They spoke to me in French. Like, get over it. But they couldn't get her on heresy or witchcraft. They could only get her for wearing pants.
Yeah.
So when you want to bring back gendered laws, I'm like, the thing that killed Joan of Arc. Yeah. And they put her in a men's prison, so that's why she wanted to wear pants. So yeah. Her trial was considered a farce by medieval standards, and that shows you just how shitty it was. So, but dragons were big in heraldry in this time. So like family symbols. And I'm gonna do, okay, like wyvern, that generally means a dragon with no arms. Again, like most clear biological distinctions, that it's like a modern thing to clarify. But even in the Middle Ages, that was kind of like, okay, wyvern, dragon, no arms. And they're also closely related. There's basilisks, which were hatched by a cock or a cockerel from the egg of a serpent or toad, which is the opposite of a cockroach, which was hatched from a cockerel's egg and incubated by a serpent or toad. But both could poison.
That's confusing.
They could both poison or kill people on sight. You could look at them they would look at you and you'd die.
Yeah.
But
I recently reread Harry Potter and the Chamber of Secrets, so I know all about basilisks. Thank you very
yeah,
much.
weasels can hurt them. So that's their
Yeah.
natural enemy is the weasel. Uh sometimes they were called king's serpents, but generally in art they started to get more cock like.
Do you think those are based on specifically like cobras? If all they have to do is look at you, like cobras strike so fast.
Hmm.
Maybe.
And like the classic enemy of a cobra is a weasel. Interesting.
Ooh.
Something to think about.
I'm gonna think about.
Hmm.
We always get
National
into
Geographic.
yeah, we always have a National Geographic section with Alyssa because it was like the last unicorn were like rhinos and yeah, narwhals. But there's also whales. So they had a red dragon is a symbol of whales. And there was a story that this king was building a fortress to defend against the Anglo-Saxons, and it kept being swallowed into the hill. And Merlin was like, oh, because there's a red and a white dragon fighting and swallowing your tower beneath it. But the white dragon won, but one day the red dragon's gonna come back and defeat the white one, being an allegory that someday whales will be free.
Hmm.
Yeah.
From what?
England.
England, the country of Wales. I was gonna make that distinction earlier, but I was like, no, we're all on board. We know what we're talking about. Free the orcas. Free the whale from England, from England's terror. Free Shamu.
It's Blackfish. Except it's just that episode of The Crown about the mining disaster.
Oh, that was terrific. Yeah, so Nation of Wales.
The Nation of Wales.
Yeah.
Got
yeah.
it.
Friendly reminder that most modern nation states are a fairly recent invention. It's time for that's the lore for today.
Nice.
That's what a dragon is. You're welcome.
You're welcome. Sorry, wrong
If
movie.
you didn't already know, I feel like everyone should know what a dragon is by now.
Yeah, but do they know where it came from?
Right.
Do they know about the beef with thunder gods?
I didn't.
A cockroaches, how Saint Margaret got her childbirth bag.
That one's wild.
That is very interesting.
Now I'm going to be looking for her image everywhere. Anytime I go to a Catholic church, a museum, wherever I might find this imagery, I'm going to be looking for her.
She's going to be bigger in museums. I feel like in most like American churches, they're going to be like, well, she's probably not real, so let's not put her on. But like the medieval period, they're like, the Pope had already been like, I don't know, like there's not a lot of evidence. So they're like,
but she's cool.
But she's cool. Yeah, it's like, well, did you pop out of a dragon? So
yeah,
maybe you're just jealous.
How powerful is your sign of the cross? Thank you very much.
Yeah, you hate her because you ain't her.
While you were gone, we did talk about briefly, which we'll probably talk about further. Probably all the dragons have split tongue, something I did not realize because you can tell in Alyssa's background his little forked tongue.
Oh yeah,
I didn't even notice
they all
that.
have a forked. All of them do.
kind of like
But
a little.
I think the Terrible Terror has like the most classic.
Prominent.
Yeah.
Interesting. Let's go to the Isle of Berk. Trying to do a Scottish accent.
Berk. So we go to Berk. Hiccup's like our narrator, and he's like, "At my town is the most disgusting, cold, cancerous trash heap. And we have dragons trying to kill us.
Yeah.
And so we meet Hiccup. He is a 2000s teen rom-com protagonist. Where he's like, I'm a dork, I can't get a girlfriend, I'm bad at fighting dragons. I apprenticed the blacksmith. So he's skilled, he's a nerd, he's smart, but like that's not valued. He's in a Friday Night Lights town. Everyone is like about fighting the dragons. And we get the blacksmith Gobbler, or Gobber?
Gobber,
Gobber.
gobbler,
Gobber.
Gobber. I think my computer autocorrected to Gobbler, and I was like, oh yeah, that's his name. Because in my brain, I'm like, oh, it's blacksmith guy. Is like where he's like, you just have to stop all of this, and he's like, you just pointed to all of me, which I think of that all the time. It's like a daily thought. Because there are sometimes there's people and I'm like, you just need to stop.
Stop all of this. Like you just gestured. Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And sometimes I feel that about myself. I'm like, just stop all of this. Yeah. So yeah, he's struggling. In his town, we meet his crush, Astrid, who does a slow-mo twirl.
Doesn't look at explosions.
She doesn't look at explosions. We meet his dad, Chief Buck Cluck, Stoic the Vast, who's like the best Viking to ever Viking. And they're talking about all these dragon species. Like there was these really cool there's like ones that set themselves on fire, which that is so fucking cool.
Monstrous nightmare.
Monster Nightmare.
She's what's Chris Christopher
Fish legs.
Fish legs, where you know all the stats and the names, like your fish legs in this group right now.
Yeah.
And I think you and I are rough nut and tough nut.
So yeah, so he's an oddball in his town, and no, like their whole thing is like, don't let him leave because he's only gonna get in trouble. He's too scrawny. He can't fight a dragon. But he's like, I gotta kill a dragon. Like you're keeping all this raw Viking down. Like he's got to prove his masculinity. So he gets a contraption and he runs off to like try and catch a night fury, which is like the most intense kind of dragon because it's so fast you can't see it coming. It blends into the sky and you hear like a honing beacon call. And so he shoots it. He hears an impact, but he doesn't have too much time to be excited because I think it's a nightmare, a terrible nightmare
A
shows up.
monstrous nightmare.
Monstrous nightmare shows up, and now he's running through the town, causing havoc, burning things, basically causes them to lose the fight. And they're all like, oh, we hate you. So things aren't too great for a little guy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He's
This is a really impressive opening sequence.
yes.
Really impressive. And like you learn everything in 3 or 4 minutes.
Yeah, it's super
Yeah.
short.
Mm-hmm. And you learn it all in the high stakes context of Hiccup and where he is in the village, what he wants, and like the individual dragons in the context of him killing them so that he can elevate his status in the village. So it's like pretty well done in that way. They actually tried this sequence without a narration voiceover and it did not work.
Right.
So they put it in.
But I mean,
It was
Yeah.
a good choice.
It's incredibly efficient. And
Yeah.
like,
Mhm.
And you also get not even just like the major dynamic between Hiccup and the rest of the community, but also between his father, between the sort of mentor blacksmith guy. You also see that he's an inventor
Mhm.
and
Yeah.
he's a little engineer. So he like you get his skills and his weaknesses. I mean, it's really just a fantastic opening.
Mhm.
You set up Astrid really well. It's like she's so cool. Like she's very capable. I think
Yeah.
they introduce us to Rough Nut and Tough Nut and everyone in
Yeah.
the little group that they're going to hang out with later. Very briefly, you see their dynamics. It is. They have everything in this like 4 or 5 minutes
Yeah.
max.
And I love a simple story because foreshadowing, I'm trying to listen to the Aragon audiobook. And some things, I love efficiency. Wow, let me just say that.
You're going to efficiently say what you want to say. I love efficiency.
Exactly. It's just like, oh, it's so nice. I don't want to be edged by the plot. I want the story to happen. I'm gonna be
Yeah.
waiting for that. so he makes mess. So they're all like, "Oh, you ruined everything, whatever, major loser." Because he's like, "I caught a night fury," and they're like, "Oh, so the sky's falling, Chicken Little."
Okay,
Sure
yep.
you did.
Sure. And his dad says you need to stop all of this again. And when it's like when the blacksmith does it, it's kind of funny. It's like sad, but it's kind of like, oh, he's just a doofy guy. And then when his dad says it, it's like,
Ouch.
wow. I'm calling the school counselor. So he the Vikings are, we have to find the dragon home base because they're gonna keep attacking. We're not gonna have food for winter. And we're gonna go. And even though no one's come back alive, and everyone's like, and he's like, and if he's dead, you have to look after Hiccup. And everyone's like, all right, let's go. So he's clowning on his own son in government meetings.
He continues to do that throughout the movie too, and I'm like, this guy sucks. Like I remember him sucking, but then watching it again, I was reminded, like, oh my God, this guy
Like
sucks.
contender, if not winner, of worst dad we've met on this podcast.
Yeah.
And we've met some bad dads.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But at least he's not dead.
I don't know. I think there's worse things to be than dead.
Well, okay. But by the end of the movie, it's he doesn't like hold on to this idea.
Right.
Like he does have a character arc.
He does have a
It
character
happens.
arc. I would never forgive him.
You would, like I think you would enjoy a lot of the fan fictions written about Hiccup and his father because there is no forgiveness there.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's health. Like I like where, like, that's the thing, is like my memory of the dad was more from the second one, I think.
Mm.
And from what I recall, he's a lot more sympathetic. Because he's gone through his arc, So
Yeah. Well, in like the trilogy, so the story itself is really, they really base it on the father-son dynamic. The
yeah,
entire trilogy, and in the first movie, even though the first movie is much more about like Toothless and Hiccup, like the crux and the legs of the story originally started with the dynamic between Hiccup and his father, and that still really comes through.
that's central. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I think it's very relatable. It's very, but you don't get a gold star for achieving the bare minimum at the end, buddy. I'm gonna say that.
I don't think anyone is rooting for him though. They're
No, it's
only rooting for Hiccup and Toothless.
Yeah, like the plot hinges on how bad of a dad he is, but I will be dragging him for it the entire time. I almost call him Goober. Gobber.
He's kind of a goober.
I know you want to pack more undies, but you gotta watch Hiccup. You gotta do dragon training. And so they go, and it's time for Hiccup to train, like, on how to fight dragons. He's not excited because, oh yes, so when I was writing down the plot, I was like, wait, what order does everything happen in? Okay, so before he does dragon training and before his dad leaves, he goes to see where he downed the Night Fury, and he did hit the Night Fury. There, he's down, and he's like, well, I'm gonna kill a dragon. I'm gonna cut out your heart, and I'm gonna take it to my dad, and he'll finally love me because I did a violence. And he looks at the dragon and sees how, like, scared he is, and is just like willing to accept his fate. And he's like, I can't do this. And so he cuts the ropes, and the dragon pounces on him, looks at him, and then runs off.
And he's like, all right. Then it just leaves.
Yeah.
Probably the most important and pivotal scene in the entire movie. That scene is what sets off everything else.
Yeah.
That is the conflict right there. He is supposed to kill a dragon and he cannot. Also, the wing moving across Toothless's eye, that was a mistake in one of the dailies. One of the animators just sort of like, it didn't render correctly. And they were like, we should keep that because it looks good.
I think it's pivotal because, yes, it's like your save the cat moment, but it is very like, it makes you be like, this is why we like Hiccup more than the rest of his town. You know,
Mhm.
this
Yeah.
is like, we don't just sympathize. We're like, oh, like you're not just sympathetic, you're admirable. You
His
know,
Mhm.
like
compassion.
yeah.
Mhm.
Um,
Yeah. And this also sets off something in a little bit where we realize this is going to spark his curiosity about dragons even more. The fact that the dragons are supposed to always go for the kill, but this dragon did not.
did not. Yeah. Uh, because he goes home and his dad is like, oh well, we signed you up for dragon training. You're gonna kill a dragon. And he's like, I was gonna say I couldn't kill dragons, but like to do the thing, yo, you go first, and he's just like, oh great. But he's like, I can't. He's like, it's what he always wanted, but now that he's finally getting it, it's like the last thing he wants. So he has to go to dragon training with his crush Astrid, with the Chad one.
Shout out.
So
Yeah.
yeah, with the Attack on D&D fans, and the annoying twins. Here's the thing. So he's the other guy, the fish legs or whatever, is like, okay, stamina this. He's like reading their D&D stats basically.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And it's like supposed to be like, shut up, that's annoying. But I'm like, he
Super
came
helpful.
prepared. He did his
Yeah.
research. He knows what's going on. And they do acknowledge that later. And I was like, thank you. Because I'm like, I knew like, oh, he's like a nerd, but I'm like, he's more prepared than the Chad.
Yeah.
Obviously. I mean, he's Chad Sykes. Like Astrid is like kind of supposed to be like the ideal combo of like knowledge and application.
Yes.
And like,
And also cool under pressure. Fish legs, I
yeah,
think because he's
Mhm.
saying it out loud, it's like, okay, he's a little nervous.
yeah.
Mhm. He's
Kind of
like
excited.
Yeah.
basically like he's the highly nerd level of Hiccup without actually being creative.
Mm.
Yeah. Uh, so there, it's training, and he's struggling, and Ashford is like, "Is this a joke to you? Like you're not good at this, And he's just like, because he's not trying to kill the dragon, and he's distracted, and he's like trying to learn more, and this dragon almost lights him up, and Gobber saves him, and he's like, dragons always go for the kill, and he's like, wait,
Hmm.
what?
Are you sure
Uh,
about that?
are you sure about that? And they start doing research in the monster manual. They're given the dragon monster manual, and the other people won't read it. Astrid's already read it, and
Mhm.
so he's the loser. But he's like, "They're okay, you can have it." So he's doing research, and he's like, it all says like deadly kill on sight, and the Night Fury page is blank, and it's like, "Run, you're gonna fucking die."
Yeah.
And he's
Pray
like,
it doesn't kill you.
yeah. He's like, oh, he's like, so he is like, he's interested. He wants to learn more.
So in the original book, that book exists, How to Train Your Dragon, but there's only one page in it, and all it says is to yell at your dragon. That's it.
Huh.
That's how you train your dragon. You yell at them.
That's terrible.
Yeah, I think this book is way better. Also, it sets up some great spin-off opportunities which they then pursue in the TV shows.
Mm.
Yeah. All the different cool dragons and their cool
Yeah.
powers.
Mm-hmm.
So books can be educational. You heard it here first. So he slowly he's starting to figure out like bond with this dragon. So he comes to bring him food, and he sees that he's stuck. Like he's injured, so he can't fly. He can't get out of this little glen that he's in, which means narrow valley, and Dale means wide valley, and the city of Glendale therefore means wide or narrow valley, wide valley. So he is giving, and so he sees him open his mouth and doesn't see the teeth, and he's like, "Oh, you're toothless," and then teeth come out, but the name stuck.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's like, I'm gonna call you Toothless, which is such a cute name for a dragon.
And this is also where he gives him a single fish, right?
Yeah.
And
Mhm.
then he eats it and then he coughs up half of it and gives it to
And is like,
Hiccup.
eat
Yep,
it.
eat it. And then he bites down on it and then Toothless goes gulp. And so Hiccup's like, okay, I'm gonna swallow it. And it's so funny.
Which is a funny thing. In some, I think it was the French, which
That's
I
this
mean,
scene, guys. This scene.
the
This
French
scene.
would train their missionaries to like eat not fancy food because that's the French. And because they'd be like, people won't respect you if you won't eat their food. And they had to like train.
That's crazy.
uh which we don't love the colonialism part, but yeah, but like he's like willing to learn and like be open-minded, and Toothless is very cat energy, very much like I'll give you some attention, but like not all of it. Like I also want to do my own thing. And he's like bugging him, and Toothless is like, okay, stop annoying me.
Also interesting thing about this scene, the rig that they had for Toothless was not meant to actually sit on his haunches like he does the thing. They had to break it
Oh,
so they could
interesting.
actually animate that.
That's interesting.
He's very cute. He's a cute little cat.
So cute.
And
He's so cute.
they have the hand touching the face thing where it's like he puts his hand out and Toothless brings his face in.
Yeah.
So it's
He
like
has to like look away because he
yeah,
can't let, he's like, okay, now I trust you. I'll let you do it.
yeah.
And then they look at each other and then he runs away. He's like, ugh, gross.
But there's understanding being built. So now Hiccup's
Yeah.
bringing him food and watching how he plays in grass, and then he's like, I'm gonna help him fly, and so he makes a contraption to try and help him fly, and it sort of works, but not entirely because he can't steer, and so he keeps going back to the drawing board and making like more updated contraptions to like help Toothless fly.
And it's intrinsically linked to Hiccup. Like
Yeah.
he can't do it on his own. Hiccup has to be there to help control the flap. So
Which
it's
is
sort of
such a
like,
smart decision. That
yeah.
entire scene where Toothless is like, I don't want you here, and he flips him off his tail, and then he
And
can't
then
fly.
Yeah.
and the
Yeah.
dragon's like, ah, shit.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah.
Which is actually also another plot point that comes back later in the trilogy. So
They yeah, so it's like they're building a relationship and building trust. Meanwhile, he's going to dragon training and asking all these questions about Night Furies, and they're like, just focus on not dying. But he's using the stuff he's learned about kind of telling dragons like back, like, okay, space, that they are ticklish with grass, that they're distracted by lasers and bright lights like
They don't like
cats.
eels.
eels.
They don't
Eel
like
was
yeah.
the first thing because he
The
brought him
eels.
he brought Toothless like this big basket of fish and there was an eel and he was like, no, we don't like eels. And so the very first time he got like the dragon under control, he used the eel sort of like in
Yeah.
his shirt to get him back. But yeah, the grass, it's sort of like dragon nip, I guess,
Yeah.
instead
Mhm.
of catnip. And then the secret spot to get the dragon to calm down. You
Like
scratch a secret spot
like on a cat.
right under the
Kind of the
chin.
same, right under the chin.
Mhm.
Mhm.
So he I just love
And
how they're
Astrid is
cats.
getting so mad.
Yeah,
Oh, she's so angry.
because now he's getting all this attention, and it's in some ways he's like, I put in the work, like I've been working for years, and then you come in, and steal the spotlight at summer camp, and now you're the cool one, and she's like, I don't like this. And Gabber is telling stories about, oh, they took me leg and stuff because they in my hand because they, dragons
Thought I
are
was
always
delicious.
ruthless. Yeah.
And they thought I was delicious.
It's like, dragons will always, like just kind of the knowledge that dragons are always going to attack. So
Look at
meanwhile,
that dragon on your desk.
the elder, the village elder, She's kind of like she's into what Hiccup is doing. And the villagers, everyone's like, oh, he's so cool. Like he knows what he's doing, and now he's popular. But he doesn't want it anymore because he's focused on helping Toothless, spending time with Toothless, learning to fly. And eventually they have this really cool like first flying sequence over the water and through like the cliffs. And
He has a
there's
cheat sheet.
yeah, and then the cheat sheet is getting in the
Okay.
way, and everything gets like they're falling, and then it flies away. But he figures out how to do it intuitively, how to feel the rhythm. I was like
Well, he's
that
been practicing on the cliff before actually
yeah
going out. So the
Yeah.
cheat sheet really just was a cheat sheet. And
Yeah.
so he had already practiced it, and it was just like fly or die, baby.
yeah. I don't
Yep.
have that good of an intuition, so I was like, wow, way to go, Hiccup. Couldn't be me. I'd be dead. So he's a smart boy. And so he is built like he's feeding like the little dragons and like kind of realizing that like everything we know about dragons is wrong. Like they have their own like world, social hierarchy. And he's just the first one who's willing to learn. But meanwhile, the dad's voyage didn't go well. It's giving Napoleon invading Russia. Uh, and he's comes back and he's like, yeah, everyone's super proud of Hiccup. And he's like, why? Did he run away? Or is he finally gone or whatever? And they're like, no, he's like really good at training. He's like, wait, what? And it's like when Chicken Little scores that home run and Buck Cluck has been like, that's my son. And it's like, you've been trashing him. Mm, mm. So like there's no forgiveness in my heart for you. So his dad is finally proud of him, and uh he gives him part of his mom's boob plate, Hookup's mom's boob plate as a hat. Uh I watched a whole video on like female armor in video games and fantasy stuff, and how boob plate would actually just put all the pressure in your breastbone and
Yeah, nobody
cause
would
your
wear
heart
that.
to immediately be stabbed if someone hit your
Yeah.
chest.
Love that.
Uh so yeah, he's like, yeah, no, we finally have something to talk about, which is where you get an inch of sympathy, where you're like, oh, like he wants to connect, but
He doesn't know
he
how.
doesn't know how. But I'm also like, you're the adult, find a way, you know
Yeah. You had 16 years to develop a connection with your son, and you
Yeah.
didn't figure it out by then.
because he
And
wasn't the
now,
son you wanted.
exactly, yeah.
And so that's why I'm like, that's on you, because no one made you be a parent, you know
Yeah. And
And his
so,
mom is gone when
hmm
he's really young, I think. I don't
yeah,
quite
yeah.
remember. They explain that more in the second and third movie.
yeah.
Also, most kids, if you ask them like one or two questions about whatever vague niche interest they have, they'll just share everything for you.
It's
So
true.
it's like,
Hmm.
it doesn't take that much, Betty,
But it's not about being an adult. It's really more just about being a good person.
Yes.
Yeah.
Because that's how my cousin was like talking about K-pop, and I was just like, I know nothing, but I was just like, all right, so who's this? And then she was like showing me all the stuff, explaining everything, and I was like, this is a lot of lore, a lot of stuff I don't know, but all you have to do is be like, okay, cool, and this, and then they take you through the whole journey.
Hmm.
It's like it's like listening to this podcast.
I was gonna say it's kind of like me sitting through the Bionicle episode. Like I'm here. I'm trying to listen, trying to focus.
Trying to understand iconic flirting. That's really what Bionicle gave the world. So they, while this is happening, uh, he's then chosen to be the next champion. Like he's like, you are gonna kill a dragon in your neck in the finale of Dragon Camp.
In
And
front of the whole village.
village, yeah.
Worst case scenario.
Yes,
Yep.
high stakes, keeping the stakes high. And so Astrid is like, that should have been me. So she's like trying to figure out what's his deal. And she follows him and she sees him trying to feed the Night Fury. And
Yeah.
then she's like, oh my God, Night
Well,
Fury. And he's like,
Not
Well,
quite.
she's just like hanging out in what'd you call it, Glen,
Yeah.
right? So
The
she's
cove,
already
yeah.
in the Glen when he walks in with the big basket. He's like, okay, we got to leave because I can't do this. He's
Yeah.
got his whole little spiel on. He's ready
Yeah.
to leave.
Hmm.
And she's like, she's there. And he's like, holy shit.
Yeah.
And
She
she's like, what are
hasn't
you
seen
doing?
Toothless yet.
She's like, what are you doing? Why are you here?
Yeah.
She's grilling him. And
The more angry she gets, the more I like Astrid as a character.
yeah, she's a great character. I love her.
She's very good.
And then what happens that this makes Toothless come out?
Well, she
He
gets
just lurks.
aggressive.
Well, yeah, Toothless is lurking sort of like
Yeah,
behind her, and she gets aggressive with Hiccup.
right.
And then
Yeah.
Toothless is like, none of that.
And then she's like, "Oh my gosh, we're gonna die." And when Toothless charges, Hiccup's like, "No, it's fine. She's a friend.
Yeah,
She's a
he gets
friend."
between them. Yeah,
Mhm.
And calms him down. And she's like,
you're psychotic.
"Yeah."
Yep.
She runs off. But Toothless swoops her up before she can get away.
Like the psychotic dragon he is.
Yeah, with just
Yep.
some light kidnapping.
Light kidnapping, yeah.
And so they're flying around.
Not
He
even just kidnapping. They take her to the top of a tall tree and dangle her there. I was like, that's crazy.
Yeah,
I
she's
mean,
not wrong. He's psychotic.
Yeah.
but it's high stakes. It's like,
Oh, it is. If she
yeah.
falls, she dies. She's completely at the mercy of these two people.
Yep. And he's like, just let me show you. And she's like, all right, I just want to not be in a position where I'm going to die. Oh, wait, I'm getting on top of the dragon and we're going to fly? Oh,
Mhm.
And then the dragon's kind of bullying her, like dunking into the water. And he's like, Toothless, we want her to like us. And so there's this. At first, I thought the dragon was jealous that he was like, oh, there's this girl coming in. But then I realized he was a homie. That's his whole thing. Because he's like, oh, it's going to be scary. But then, I'm going to show you the most beautiful sunset you've ever seen.
I can
You're
show
gonna
you the world.
Yeah,
shining,
it's very,
shimmering, splendid.
very
He
a whole new
changes his
world.
tune the minute she apologizes. Like
Yeah.
the absolute second she's like, I'm sorry. He's like,
Okay,
okay.
we're chill.
And
Look
so
how
now
cool
he's like,
this is.
yeah,
Yeah.
he's like, oh, let me get her to like hold on to him and like feel the
Yep.
romance. Like, oh, look at the stars, look at the sunset. And so she's having a beautiful time. But then he's called to like the dragon den. He hears like the dragon call.
His eyes change. They
Yeah.
they're what's the opposite of dilating? No, opposite of dilating, whatever that is. They get
Yeah.
smaller because he's like focused.
And they're with all these dragons, but the dragons aren't really paying that much attention to them, but they're bringing in their prey, sheep, fish. And he's like, oh my gosh, what does that make? Or Astrid's like, what does that make us then?
Mhm.
And then, but he's there and he doesn't throw them into the pit. I fell into the pit.
I fell in the pit.
But all the dragons are throwing their stuff in to this giant eel-like dragon. I felt like he was Eli because you only see his like top half, you don't see the legs till later. And so I always thought they hated eels because it reminded them of this guy.
Oh, interesting. I have never gotten that before.
And so it's this big one that just eats all their stuff. So they don't even eat the food. And then as a little dragon only got like half a fish, and then that dragon gets eaten.
Mm-hmm.
Didn't meet his quota.
Yeah.
That
corporate culture.
That giant dragon. I don't think they ever say it in this movie, but I'm pretty sure they say it in the next couple movies and in the TV shows. That dragon is the Red Death.
The Red
Death?
The Red Death.
Oh,
That's
the Red Death.
the name.
He's gray.
I
guess maybe he's covered in
just
soot.
what it's called. I was thinking about that as I was watching it. I was like, I guess it has like little red nubbins on it, but
red nubbins.
But then in like, I think it comes from the original story because they have like the green death and the blue death. In
oh,
this
interesting.
One. So he's like, Toothless, we got to get out of here.
Purple? I don't know.
so Toothless, they escape, but it causes a stir of like dragons flying out and the big dragon trying to eat him. And they get back, and it was so much. But Astrid is like, thanks, Mama, for saying that, for spilling. And she does the thing where she's like, that's for kidnapping me, or like punches him and then gives him a kiss on the cheek. And it's like super awkward in a very endearing way where she's like, that's for everything else, and like runs off.
Yeah.
But she does ask what he's going to do. As Reese Witherspoon foretold, she says that there's a inevitable part in every script where the girl asks the guy, what do we do?
She actually does that twice.
She does it
Yep.
twice. And I'm like,
Yeah.
as Reese foretold. And he's like, well, I don't know, maybe something crazy. So he drops his weapons at the big trial. He's there. It's intense. His dad's like, I finally love my child. And he's
Yeah,
like,
he before the whole thing starts, he's like, we all know Hiccup was kind of a fuck up, but now he's all right, and he's gonna show us. And that's when I was like, really, dude? Like, this is part of your announcement to this event? Come on.
yeah, we've met some deranged parents on this show, but
That is
wow.
deranged.
He's up there when I think of like the drunk inbred genocidal king in Cinderella. He's a crazy dad. Maybe so. I'm sure the time traveler's wife's dad. He was kind of annoying, but I'm trying to think of the worst dads that we've met.
King Triton.
King Triton, yeah.
Bad dad.
King Triton at least likes some things about Ariel.
Her voice.
Her voice and her like talent, and like is proud of her in that capacity.
Yeah.
But he does blow up all her stuff, and it's very scary. Yeah.
So
This is it. But he's like, I'm choosing. We don't have to fight. We can get along. Like, see, and then
he's got this dragon like under control.
Yeah, he's under
and
control.
Then it's Stoic, who's the one who's like, he freaks out and he like slams his hammer on the fence.
But the thing that like throws Stoic into this, like, it's not really rage, more like disbelief or something. Hiccup takes off the hat that Stoic gave him and says, I'm not one of them. So it's like bad reaction, dude, but I kind of see where he's coming from.
Yeah,
because he literally like rejects his father in front of the whole village. But then again, his father's
been rejecting him. He's been,
yeah.
And so it's like he doesn't like a taste of his own medicine because he's a man baby.
Yeah. Well, also it's just, it's okay for him to reject his son because he's the father, and the son to reject the father is not okay, kind of thing.
Yeah. So he freaks out.
I mean, like, I am not defending his actions in any way. I think this is more an indication of Hiccup rejecting Viking culture as a whole.
True.
Because I'm not one of them. Not like I don't care about Stoic. It's like he's rejecting Viking culture as a whole.
Right.
Yeah. Again, a culture that has rejected him. I think that happens to a lot of people, in different communities that feel like their community will be like, you're not one of us, you're not one of us. And then you're like, yeah, I'm not one of us. And they're like, excuse me.
Yeah.
And it's like,
which is the exact reaction that happens.
Yeah. And so he escalates things, throws the hammer, throws it off. Now Hiccup's in danger, and on the chaos, Toothless hears that and is like, and flies in. And then everyone's like,
Toothless is desperately trying to get out of the glen because he can't fly. So he literally like claws his way out.
It's intense. He's like, he's doing everything he can. He claws his way out, and he wasn't willing to do that for himself, but he would do that for Hiccup. Exactly. And he flies, and you see like that, like kind of Night Fury impact, and everyone's like, oh my God, it's like they're in danger. But the reason the fire was blasting everywhere initially it's because Stoic escalated things, but he's like, you put
Yeah.
everyone in danger, but he did. It's
Yep.
the classic refusal to take accountability. And so Toothless is protecting Hiccup, but they're like, oh, you know, we have to fight him, and they beat him down. And
He
he's like,
almost kills Stoic, right?
yeah, because
Yeah.
Stoic is attacking him.
Mm-hmm. And
And
then Hiccup is like, Toothless, no! And then
yeah,
just is like the, oh, okay. And they all
yeah,
pile on top of him.
it's again like a worst case scenario, like the worst possible outcome of any situation keeps happening to Hiccup. And so he is like, just don't hurt Toothless. He's like, you care more about a dragon than all the people you put in danger. And it's like,
Are we in the scene in the Great Hall thing now?
yeah,
I love this scene. Visually, it's so good. The strip of light that is
yeah,
just like in the doorway, and then you have the father and the son talking, and anytime Stoic like actively shuts down Hiccup, he pushes him into the darkness. Oh, it's
yeah.
really good.
Mm.
Well, and he's like, you never listen to me.
Mm-hmm.
You
And
never,
he doesn't.
No.
yeah, you've never wanted to listen to me. He's like, I don't have a son.
Yeah, this is a visual representation of like the active shutting down of the father-son relationship.
Yeah. And so they've captured Toothless. They're gonna use him to lure them to the dragon lair, to like take them so they know what to do. And so
Yeah, because Toothless Hiccup accidentally reveals about the
he's
nest.
like, well, this is why they do this. You
Mhm.
know, I saw it. And he's like, wait, you've been there?
He's like, he goes, oh, did I say that? No. And then that's when Stoke is like, all right, we're taking your dragon and we're gonna use him to as a compass.
So they do, and Astra's like, wow, your life sucks. Your dad disowned you. Everyone hates you. Your dragon's captured. And he's like, yeah, thanks for summing that
Thanks.
up.
And like, I think in any other movie, I would be like, that's lame. But that is so Astrid. So I think it's like it fits really well. Because like if that had been like any other character, I would have been like, this feels kind of pinned in there to like show us where he is at this moment. But that is so Astrid that she would be like, wow, here are the 5 things that are really your struggles right now. What are you going to do about it?
There's this movie uses a lot of things that are like in a way cliche or very classic tropes, but it uses them very effectively because it's a very simple
Yeah.
story and it's focused on like the emotions of that story. So you're like, instead of feeling like, oh, this trope, it's more like, oh, I love this one. I love when people do this, you know?
Yeah.
Like I love like it's just it shows how like simple classic stories can be done really well. And there's a reason why those tropes exist is because
Mhm.
they can be really effective in telling a good story.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Uh
This particular scene actually, while I was watching the director's commentary, they were talking about how they didn't have a low of the like the lowest of the low scene for
Mm.
Hiccup. He kept it was just like this jump where he would go from the his father taking Toothless to directly like corralling the teens and
mhm.
like, and so they had
Yeah.
to add this scene so that it was like for the audience to be in sort of simmer in this like like despair
Yeah.
basically. um and
The
they
moment of
really used it.
aftermath.
Yeah.
Yeah. And we've
Yeah.
talked about how so many movies like they need that.
Yep.
And like it's really strong when you let people when you let the character feel that lowest low, then the highest high like feels good and earned.
Yeah.
Uh and so that's where he's like, I'm gonna do something crazy. And he like releases the dragons that are kept for training, and he's like, guys, we're gonna fly them. We're gonna go save Toothless and kind of our parents because they can't fight what's coming.
Yeah, they're
And
gonna die.
they're all down because Astrid is like, no, it's fine. Like if Astrid is like, yeah, we're doing this.
Yeah. Well, I think like Astrid is sort of like coaxing him into the idea in that scene of Aftermath, because he's like, I couldn't kill a dragon. And then he says, I wouldn't. He's like, I'm the first Viking who wouldn't do
Wouldn't,
it.
and that's very
And she's like,
key.
yeah, but you also were the first one to ride a dragon. Like, you changed the paradigm. And so
Mhm.
she's sort of like coaxing him into like, let's do this.
And
Well,
So
not only that, but Astrid is a like really great character in that she is the most diehard Viking of the teen Vikings. She is the epitome of the next generation, and she represents that as a character. So if she can change, so can everybody else.
yep.
yeah. And she also is like, well, because she's like, why? And he's like, well, I saw how scared he was. And I realized like he was as scared as I was. And so it's like you could get that earlier, but like now he says it. And so it's like
Yep.
now it's kind of like cards on the table. Like, what are we gonna do? Like, and it's like, oh, they never say, oh, because you're special, but it is kind of like because you're the first one who had that compassion and leaned into that, like you could
Mhm.
unlock something. And so now they're like, all right, let's get the dragons, let's go.
This moment's also really good too, because this is the first time the teens are like interacting with the dragons that way. And so you see like their hesitation, and then instantly like they're excited because
Yeah,
like the one dragon, they had like that great moment with the Chad dude,
yeah,
and then all the other dragons come out and they're peaceful. They're like, yeah,
yeah.
we're coming out, we're helping you.
Because
Mhm.
Chad has been trying to get with Astrid the whole time of like, oh, we could hang out and work out. Or it's like, oh, I
Yeah,
was being blinded.
I'm in my parents' basement. You can come over and work out.
Like the sun was in my eye. And Astrid the whole time was just like,
Doesn't even
whatever.
do
Like
anything for
he's
him.
just
Yeah.
like, I'm annoyed, like he's like, I'm trying to focus. And that's why Hiccup gets on her nerves, is because she's trying to focus and he's doing on his bullshit.
Yeah.
Uh and so they're going to save everyone. Well, the parents go to the dragon mound and they open like the cave with their catapults and they go in and then all the dragons fly out. And they're like, oh, so I
We
guess
did it.
we did it. But
Yay.
but Chief Buck Cluck, he's like, I know we didn't win. He's smarter than that. He is a good Viking. He's like,
Well, he
wait, there's something
also
more.
doesn't he also look out at the ship and he sees Toothless like wriggling, like there's
Yeah.
something else
Mhm.
here.
Yeah,
And
there's
so he's
something
like,
else.
oh, something else is gonna happen. He's
Uh,
like, it's like, man your stations, get the catapults ready.
and the Red Death comes out and he's big, he's bad, he's lighting shit on fire. People are, as Vanessa Hudgens would say, people are gonna die. Uh,
This
and
was like the actual representation of opening a can of worms that you should not have opened.
Yep.
yes.
Yeah. And of course, like they're so unprepared for it too, because like they use the catapult to like throw rocks. And I'm
Yep.
like, just throwing pebbles at this giant lizard monster. And like
Yeah.
there's one shot like you're like over the shoulder of the dragon and you just see a rock come out its head and just goes. I'm like, this is hilarious. Like I literally laughed out loud, even though it's a very intense scene. But I was like, this is so crazy. Like you guys are not prepared for this.
Immediate consequences.
Yeah.
And yeah, they're overpowered, and so they're gonna die. But the team comes in and they have a plan. The team.
A
They're
team
like,
team.
you like, okay, fish legs, what do you know? Like, what's up? And they're like, he's like, okay, like he's like seems really strong, really tough skin. And so they're like, you like Chad, distract his eyes, like you two distract the eyes and try and like keep him busy. And then what are the twins doing? Or no, the twins are
They're annoying
distracting.
him.
They're being
They're
Yeah.
annoying.
annoying it. They're trying to figure out if it has a shot limit.
Yes.
Yeah.
I should, because
And
dragons all have limits of how much they can breathe fire.
then they're also like, okay, stay in its blind spot. And I think eventually like Fish Legs is like, it doesn't have a blind spot.
So
Yeah.
many eyes. And they're gonna Astrid and Hiccup are gonna free Toothless.
So one thing that I really loved about the scene is that they're using basically the antics that they used in training, but instead of as weaknesses, now they're kind of like strengths.
Yeah.
And it's mimicking those scenes a lot. And I thought that was just really clever.
And it's a funny way to play on like they didn't have time to develop like a super complicated cast of characters. Like
Right.
they're side characters with like kind of one bit, and they're like, well, we're gonna use the bit, so it's not just a bit. It's like informs the plot. I mean, I
Yeah.
think her being annoying is even in the third one. That's like one of the main things I remember. And the third
Yeah.
one is like she gets captured and is so annoying they like let her go or something. I don't
Yeah.
remember. Yeah. But the plan's mostly working, right? They're keeping the dragon distracted, but then the ships are on fire. Toothless is drowning, and Hiccup's trying to free him underwater. And I'm like, damn. And so Stoic dives in and saves Hiccup. And then he dives in. This is his big turning point, and he
Saves the
saves
dragon.
Toothless. And when he unlocks the cage, Toothless pulls him out.
Yep. Brings him with him. Yeah.
So this is his like big like, okay, like I saved the dragon saved me. And so they're trying to like fight this big ass dragon, and Toothless and Hiccup fly so high up that the dragon is like basically falls to is falling, and he learns that dragons don't have they're not fireproof on the inside.
Mm-hmm.
And so while the dragon's falling,
he's like opening his mouth, right?
Yeah.
And then so like they time it, and then he's like, okay, and then they flip over, and then he shoots. Yeah, right into his mouth, and he's like,
yeah.
And then he falls to his death and explodes. But
definitely explosion. Yeah.
while they're falling,
so
are Toothless and Hiccup.
Right, because during the fight in the sky, Toothless's fake
rudder, fake fin is damaged.
It's damaged.
It burns
it's on
up,
fire.
right?
It's burning. Yeah. And then so like that was very clever, I think, because they actually wrote in a deadline, like they have to defeat this dragon in this amount of time because otherwise they won't be able to fly anymore.
Yeah, it's a very like fast, high stakes climax and it's using knowledge and stuff we've built up throughout the movie.
Yep.
So they time it perfectly where they light him up from the inside. But they're caught in the flames. They're like, oh no, Hiccup. But we see Toothless, and he cradled Hiccup like a little baby in his wings and saved him. And so we see this kind of moment.
Most of him.
Because now, Hiccup wakes up, he's with Toothless in his house. He's like, what's going on? But he's missing a leg.
And he's got this kind of looks like a hook foot.
Yeah.
As what's
a prosthetic.
Word? Yes, prosthetic. Yeah.
And he sees that now Vikings and dragons live in harmony.
He thinks he's dead.
Yeah. He's like, okay, I'm in heaven/hell.
And Astrid is like, that's for scaring me. Kisses him, that's for
okay, here's the thing. They're teens,
yeah,
and they do a kiss in front of basically everyone, and I was like, that's so embarrassing. That's so embarrassing.
That's so embarrassing. But Astrid, I feel like she is like, you know what? I'm laying claim to my man. He's cool now.
That's true.
I don't think Astrid is embarrassed at all.
No. But I'm thinking like, I was like, if that was me, I'm like, oh my God, that would be so embarrassing.
Yeah. But she's like, I don't care.
Yeah.
I'm a bad bitch. You can't kill me.
Yeah.
And so now like he has like Toothless has a whole kind of system that Hiccup's leg hooks into.
Yeah.
Which I think is such a cool way to like play a disability as a strength, like an injury. And I think a lot of people connected to that representation.
And it's the foot that he lost is also the same side that Toothless is missing the other part of his tail wing, right? Isn't it the same side?
Yeah.
Yeah. Because
it's kind of like full circle. The Hiccup losing his foot really cements them as like a team. They work together, they need each other, they support each other. But actually this was a huge like discussion about whether or not they should actually do this in the movie. And it went through a lot of test audiences, and everyone said, you need to keep this because this is like the icing on the cake. This is really good. But if you think about it, it's really sort of like a high level move for an animated film. Like losing limbs does not happen really at all.
Yeah. And also I think that like the blacksmith Gobber, he has a prosthetic for a hand and on one of his feet. And he was actually the one who basically fashioned the new system for Hiccup while he was sort of out. So it's like they also have a new connection, those two. Well,
and I always kind of liked their dynamic because he was like, he wanted Hiccup to be a Viking and like do the things Vikings do, but he was much more, he hadn't given up on him the way his father had, and sometimes it takes a village of Vikings. And so now he's like, we're Burke. It still snows 8 months or like 10 months out of the year. 9 months out of the year.
Hails the other 3. The people, or no, the food is tough and tasteless. So are
like
the people. But we have pets instead of pests, and they're dragons, which it's such a, also like to think about if they didn't have the narration at the beginning, like you said, like it wasn't going to be at all in the beginning, and now they can connect it. It's like it feels like that is like the obvious choice. Like you have to do it, because it just works so perfectly.
It's almost like a Disney storybook. Like it's that opening and closing, and it's what's great is that it's very much setting up a series, but it could also, like, this could be a standalone story, right? Like that's a satisfying ending. And so they're in a happy village now.
The first scene we see is dragons flying around destroying the village. The last scene we see is dragons flying around in a nice village that's not being destroyed.
And they're free. The dragons are free because they don't have to work for that big dragon anymore. The mob boss dragon.
The mob boss, the Dawn dragon.
So that's our storyline. Do we root for our protagonist, Hiccup?
Oh yes, of course.
Absolutely.
I wrote, she's impossible to not root for.
He's a dork with compassion. Because I think there's lots of movies that give us like the dorky, geeky guy who can't get a girl and just expect that to be enough for us to like him. But it's like he's a dork, yes, but he's also very smart. He's open-minded. He's empathetic. Like he has all these very like heroic qualities.
He's very brave too. Not only does he go to approach the Night Fury by himself, he's also brave enough to not do the thing that he is supposed to do. He's brave enough to, stand up to the whole village and his dad, I mean, he's very brave.
He's having courage and becoming it through this plot.
Yep, he is.
It is interesting. I think we glossed over this, but there is that scene between Stoic and Gobber when they first arrive on the scene, where they're fighting the Red Death, and Gobber's like, he's every bit the something Viking that you were.
Like headstrong, stubborn,
So it's like, yep. Like it took you this long, but now you get it.
He's Stoic's kind of a superficial person, so he can only see like the surface level differences, and he can't see the things that actually make them similar.
And I think it also, like, he's superficial, but it's not even, I think he just doesn't give his son the time of day, and I think that is because he's a chief. He just doesn't have time.
And he's not willing to set aside that time.
Right.
Well, I mean, being a chief and a single dad, like, he
single
didn't
dad
do
who
it
leads
right, but
single dad who leads an
Yeah.
entire village.
Yeah.
Mhm.
But he doesn't have gentle hands or a heart of a fire. I'll
No,
say it here.
but I guess he is a survivor.
He is a survivor. He survives this movie.
Oh no.
Wow.
Oh.
Ouch.
So I also love Toothless and his dynamic and Hiccup's dynamic. Toothless, I love that he's cat coded because cats are often misunderstood and seen as
Yeah.
mean or aggressive when they're just they have a lot of sweetness in them.
And yeah, I mean, I wish I could show you my literally Edgar, who was, all up here. He's been cuddling right here next to me the whole time.
All three of
This
us
little
have cats.
cone.
If
Yeah.
if you didn't know, now
Yeah.
you know. We're all cat people.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it also works. I like that they're okay. I don't want to do too many, but we'll find out. You probably guessed what next week's episode is, but I like that their bond isn't magical, isn't forced by magic. I like that the
Yeah.
dragon and boy bond is made by like work. They like did the work, and like Hiccup helped Toothless, and Toothless was like willing to be helped and to like learn from like it, and it wasn't right away immediate. They had to build a relationship.
And they weren't magically chosen to
Yeah.
each other. Just, he Hiccup was like, okay, I'm gonna target the Night Fury because that's the biggest, baddest bitch out there. And he ended up attacking this dragon. So it's like there's no magical connection of like how they even got connected. It was just he chose this dragon.
It's all about
this movie is like just a sequence of worst case scenarios happening.
Yes.
And Hiccup and Toothless just like make the best of it. So
yeah, and that's a good movie. That's what makes a good movie is a series of worst case scenarios, and they're all made by character choices. It's not fate, destiny, predestination looking at you.
We know that you are a free will stan.
Yes, and because that makes good stories. And do we ship Hiccup and Astrid?
Sure. Yeah,
I guess so. I mean, Astrid can have whoever she wants. It's more I root for Astrid doing whatever she wants. She like assuming that Hiccup also wants her, but we already know that he does. So
yeah. Big stretch.
I think it's like they keep it as like kind of an awkward,
it's
like
so awkward, such an awkward teen romance. And it's actually really interesting. Like at the beginning of the movie, Hiccup is like, Astrid, I want, she's unattainable for him as a goal. And he doesn't pursue her at all.
Yeah.
So I think that's very refreshing.
She chases him down.
Yeah.
And then gets involved in his deal. And but he's just focused on his thing.
Yeah.
And again, it focuses, he says the lines, oh, I wish I could get a girlfriend or whatever, but it really, the relationship, the approval he's seeking is kind of his dad's, know. It's not about like impressing like the village girls. Yeah. I also said I like the blacksmith who I feel like he shits himself a lot. He has a lot of jokes about needing new undies or packing new undies. So I like him a lot, but I don't like his shitty dad, who I'm going to say is the antagonist of the movie. Like the Red Death is like the villain per se that they fight at the end, but his dad is like the antagonist of the movie. Like it's the one who's getting in the way of his goals.
Yeah.
And I think he's, in that sense, I think he's a good antagonist because like if it was just some guy who was the chief and it wasn't his dad, it'd just be like, okay, whatever. But there is that emotional component. So there's like, it's a very layered conflict.
Yeah, it's like really well written.
Yeah. And so when people talk about movies don't need a villain, that's when I was like, they at least need an antagonist.
Right.
His dad isn't 100% evil, even though I have and will continue to drag him. He's not like, he's not like a villain. Like he wants his village to survive and not die, but he's an antagonist in his son's life. because he's unwilling to understand or isn't willing to set aside the time to listen, be open-minded. And so he needs to learn from Hiccup, whose whole thing is kind of being open-minded and willing to try new things.
Yeah.
Like whether it's inventions or talking to a dragon.
They do a good job in making him at least somewhat sympathetic in a couple of scenes so that he doesn't come off as being a villain.
Yeah. I would kind of put him on par. I mean, I do hate him, but I would like with a King Triton type character where it's like you disagree with basically everything they do, but you kind of get why they see the world that way, you know. So maybe Butt Cluck's worse. Whenever we get to Chicken Little, we'll decide.
That should be the last movie of the podcast.
So it goes Little Mermaid 2, Chicken Little.
Then Chicken Little. Right before the world ends.
Right before the world ends. So the next election. So Matt,
you guys have a pretty quick deadline coming up.
No, the world is running out of time. I would say if this movie has a message, it would be kind of like to be open-minded, you know, to be accepting, to try new things. It's a movie about like acceptance in that way.
Yeah. I also think open-mindedness is also a really big, or not open-mindedness, compassion.
Yeah.
Is also another really big theme here, is that like you may think that something is your enemy, but maybe by having compassion and trying to empathize, you can better understand. So sort of compassion with open-mindedness.
And I think that's a common theme, but I think this movie does it really well compared to a lot of movies. Like if you compare, like you would say like Pocahontas has a similar message. Edgar. But like this movie is able to convey that message in a more effective, less preachy tone because it also doesn't have the historical context of that movie, but the
colonized are not there.
Yeah, like that thing is like the historical context of that, like the message doesn't fully apply, but in this world it can apply, and it doesn't feel like there's no speech about like you just need to be loving, you know. It shows, it doesn't tell. I think that's what I'm trying to say is that like it just gives you a story without like hitting you over the head with a message. So I guess our big question was that your fantasy?
No, it was not. Guys,
Allyssa hates this movie.
This is my reality.
A dragon, Allyssa like pops on a dragon, rise off from the Zoom call.
There she goes.
Not my fantasy at all.
That's funny. I think this is my fantasy in terms of it being such a great movie, but also like, I think I could go with living in Burke to have like a little pet dragon. Let me think. Which dragon would I want? I'd have to look at the list of them. Maybe one of those like little tiny ones. That might
Terrible
be kind of
Terror.
fun. The Terrible Terror. I mean, I do have 2 of those in my house already, but I mean I think this is such a good movie, and like I haven't seen it in a long time, and so like watching it after it's been quite a few years now, it's like, oh, I forgot how good it was. Like you're just like, this movie's great. It's my fantasy.
I think I should mention that every time I see it, I cry. Every time. Which is, in most of the time when I watch movies, I cry in like really sad spots, but this movie makes me cry in like the high, like top end of your emotions. Like you're so elated. That's when I start crying because I want to fly on a dragon just like they do through the clouds. Yeah, it's very impressive.
Yeah, I agree. Like the ending, like when he's like having his voiceover and like everything is different now, I feel that and I'm like, like it's making me emotional. So
yeah, I would say yes. It's like it is my fantasy. It's such a good movie. And I just love a simple, well executed story, and it just does it so well. Tight runtime, but gets so much in. And
Oh yeah.
also, I want to ride on Toothless. I want a little goofy little friend, and I want to fly through the clouds.
Yeah.
I want to go where no one goes.
As someone who has black cats, I feel like I already have Toothless because I literally anytime like literally the picture behind Alyssa, literally I have a picture of my cat doing that exact same thing, the thip. And
Yeah.
it's so cute. He is just so adorable.
Yeah. Alyssa, thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you for having me. I will talk about this movie all day. I have so much more that I didn't say.
Director's cut, the Snyder cut.
Release the swear engine cut of this podcast episode. We don't have one. You're getting what we already recorded. All right. Well, you can follow Not My Fantasy on Instagram and TikTok at Not My Fantasy Pod. And if you are listening on iTunes, please give us a 5-star review. Leave us a comment with that review telling us how much you love the podcast. You can even just use some emojis. Yeah. And then also, I think you can also rate us on Spotify too. So definitely do that. And if you're watching on YouTube, hi, hello. You can
Smash that like button.
smash the like button, hit the subscribe button, and hit that notification bell so you get notified anytime we drop a new episode. Oh boy. What's next episode?
Comment below with what kind of dragon you want.
Oh, yeah. What dragon do you want? And if it's Toothless, we're not going to say that like, oh, that's the obvious answer because Toothless is amazing.
Yeah.
But if you do your research on what the other dragons are and you pull out some like ones that we didn't even talk about today, I would love to hear it.
Yeah.
I want to know what other dragons you guys love.
So to continue with this dragon mini couple sods, we're talking about Aragon.
I thought maybe.
Yeah. I'm listening to the audiobook now. We're talking about the movie.
Cullen's favorite song.
My favorite song about a blue dragon. I mean, because How Far I Go, or We Go Where No One Goes, that may be my favorite song about a black dragon.
Okay.
But my favorite song about a blue dragon, Avril Lavigne's Keep Holding On, then covered by Glee cast twice, and every single Glee project cast member. And we have a clip of Avril singing Keep Holding On in her intro video.
What?
So like in the gifts or whatever, like one of them is Avril Lavigne singing Keep Holding On.
How come you always like, yeah, there's this in our, I was like, no, it's not. I've seen this intro video. Now I have to, when I'm editing, I'm gonna have to go back. Also, I think we should also mention Alyssa was also on The Last Unicorn, so go listen to that episode from many months ago.
Well, there's also Beauty and the Beast 2017. This is the third timer.
Blacked it out. Traumatized. I guess you can go listen to that one. I'm sure it's pretty funny because none of us liked it. Right?
No.
So those are always good episodes. But yeah, if you want to hear more of us gabbing, we do have, 100+ episodes of a show called Glee Boot, where we talked about Glee. We watched the entire series. We watched Glee cast or the Glee project. We watched
the Glee concert
Christmas
movie, the Lindsay Lohan Christmas movie, the Damien McGinty Christmas movie.
Damien McGinty /
Heather Morris.
Yeah, Heather Morris Christmas movie. And then we did the final Gleekies. We basically had an award show for Glee. So if you want to check that out, again, 100+ episodes, you can find us basically wherever you find this podcast. It's also on YouTube. There's no video component, but if you prefer YouTube, it's on there.
Yeah.
Glee Boot, GLEEBOOT.
Yeah, it's all years of our lives.
Yes, it is the days of our lives.
It is the days of our lives through Glee.
During the pandemic.
Yeah. Yes, hear us as baby podcasters figuring out what the fuck we're doing. And yeah, so we'll see you next time for Aragon. So we celebrate Year of the Dragon. And Alyssa, We'll see you soon. I'm sure you'll be back on the show.
You could tell me anything fantasy and I would watch it. So
Great, because we have a fantasy podcast.
yeah, more where that came
Alyssa will
from.
be back.
you're like, we need a guest. You just,
Yeah, literally. All right. Well, thanks, listeners. Bye.
Bye.